Hello and welcome back to another episode of Talking Turtles. In this episode, we'll be talking about the 2012 episode, Turtle Temper. I'm your host, Teddy, and I'm being joined once again by.
Hi, I'm Hayden.
Okay, so and quickly before we do get started in this episode, I would like to briefly just go. I'll quickly just quote what you said last episode about the title of this episode, because last episode I asked you about the title of this episode and things you think that could happen in it, and it was quite interesting with what you put down. As you said, there's going to be a lot of anger, a lot of temper, and a lot of tantrums in this episode. You were somewhat correct about that, but I also got a feeling you was probably just rewording the title or the sentence or like the title of the episode. So yeah, I'd like to briefly go over your thoughts about this episode.
Well, this episode I actually quite enjoyed it because it was quite funny. Ralph getting picked on all the time by his brothers. I quite enjoyed that, and how we understand what Ralph's character is a bit more, and understand that he's a bit of a loose cannon with his temper and his anger. He likes to take out a lot on his brothers, and seeing how he can control that anger for the greater good of his brothers and the mission overall, which I quite enjoyed watching.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Okay, so like with this episode, I did really enjoy this one, and this one has a very special place in my heart, just because for some reason this was the first episode I watched this version. So it has a special place in my heart. But the thing is with this episode, I do have like a bit of a problem with this one, and I don't know if you sort of noticed it, but like his anger sort of just comes out of nowhere, and it's just mainly just within this episode. And like if you just look back at like the last two episodes, he didn't really have much of an anger problem. He sort of like bullied Mikey for like, a little bit, but like in this episode, he was just angry all the time. And I feel like these sort of episodes, it sort of brings out the worst in these characters. And while these like stories are trying to develop the characters in their own way and trying to like teach them a lesson, it sort of doesn't really work that well, especially with this version tells, because like when you look at it, it's almost like there's no build up to this sort of thing, or it might be like some little build up to it, but then the characters go through like this whole story where like they need to learn their whole problems, and then and by and oh, and just by the time the episode they've learned their like lesson. I feel like they don't really learn that much because they always just start exactly where they started off from the last or from the previous episode. But I don't know if you picked up on that.
Yeah, I did pick up on Ralph's anger. It just sporadically came out of nowhere, and I was thinking, hold on a minute, where's this anger come from? And he's taking it a lot out on his brother Mikey, and I'm like, okay, Mikey's a bit annoying from time to time, but come on, seriously, you have to treat him dirty like that, Ralph. I don't understand that, but yeah, just trying to
Yeah,
understand where that anger is suddenly coming from.
it must be. I don't know. This might be like a sort of good comparison to make, but with the amount of stuff that Raph like really like moans out with Mikey and all the other brothers, if there's like little things. I don't know. It's probably like a good comparison to make, but it's sort of like a Karen. I don't know if that's a good comparison to make or not, but
That's
okay.
Karen.
So what did you think about the beginning scene just before the theme song played?
The scene before the theme song plays. Is that that is the
Well, where Mikey was poking Raph on the head,
oh
and then Vic came out, and then the crank started shooting,
oh yeah,
and
that
yeah,
was right. Yeah, that was a funny scene. I quite like that because he kept poking and poking and poking, and of course it's brotherly banter, and it's a really good funny thing. I found it really funny because he kept poking and poking and poking, and of course they're on a secret covert mission trying to hide out against the Cran, and it's just I just like it because the sudden explosion from Ralph, and of course then the brotherly banter kicks in, but then it's quite an aggressive banter that they have between the two. It's quite aggressive. I'm not lying. It is very,
yeah,
very aggressive. Just Ralph on him, just like kicking. him just like on his head. It's like you gotta say this. You say I'm the best. It's a proper physical banter, brotherly banter. But that's what I kind of like about it, I guess. Just him, they showing their banter together. Of course, Mikey winds him up because he knows that his weaknesses are he doesn't like to be called names, and of course that just reminds me of like brotherly banter in real life.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'll just say like that scene. There wasn't anything like stand out, but like it, like the first time I did watch it, I did think it was quite funny. But like, well, I feel like now, like having grown up, I do feel like it's maybe a bit too childish. But like at the time, I did find it quite funny. Another thing here is the fact that like when Donnie says that he's got intel from April, this could potentially be like a continuity error because in a future episode, in episode 6, April reveals that she's like started a website and she's getting information from people about the Krang where the location is. But in this episode, where like she wasn't even in this one, she just or she gives Donnie the location, says like here's where the Krang is. So I feel like that may be like a continuity error, but also like there is sort of like a theory and speculation going around online that like maybe this episode was more or less like shown out of order, and like I will say this like and like with like future knowledge of the show and like things that happen, I do feel like it does work better if this one didn't happen straight after the last 2 episodes as Ras and the readers come out of nowhere, but like also not to mention like this continuity error. And yeah. So, and what did you think of Vic?
Vic, I quite enjoyed the character. His voice suited his character quite well. He's like the big. He's just a really cool character because he starts off. He's a bit of an idiot. He's a bit of a
Yeah,
rude. He's one of those guys that is literally down on his last pennies and he's just trying to enjoy the last of it. And of course, he was
yeah,
very insulting to the Ninja Turtles, including Ralph, which kicks off his anger a bit more. But and of course, further on in the episode, I quite like Vic and what he becomes because he becomes this super mutant spider, and he's just like completely different character. He's on a warpath. He wants to destroy everything, and that I quite like that. Like the first couple of scenes with Vic in is like, he's a pretty plain and lame character, but as we progress towards the end, I quite like how he becomes a super mutant spider.
Okay, I want to quickly stop here. Did you are you saying Ralph or Raph?
Raph or Ralph?
It's Raph.
Raph.
I'm pretty sure you've been saying Ralph all this time.
Have I been saying Raph this entire time?
Yeah, I mean, and he's saying like slightly wrong, but like, oh well. So like with Vic, I do quite enjoy his character. I feel like he's like for once, I feel like he's one of the most realistic characters in the show as he's recording the turtles and stuff like that. And I do think that like his character is like the polar opposite of Raph, but like also like so similar to him. I do quite enjoy his like sort of like connections with the turtles. Um, and I feel like going off of the last episodes, going into this one, as sort of like a like mini villain sort of thing. I feel like he was like a good like transition from like big snakeweed to Krang, potential armies and stuff like that, to just going to more of a like street level sort of villain, even though he's like quite dangerous. Um, okay, so with the do you have anything to say about the fight between the ref? No. Do you have anything to say between like the Turtles and the Krang fight on the rooftops?
The fight scenes, I quite enjoyed that one because there's a lot more dynamic fighting going along. They've now become closer as a team, and their fighting skills have like seriously improving over 2 episodes. Like from episode one, they were clumsy, they didn't know how to fight or anything. From episode three to becoming a fully well-oiled machine of just kicking ass everywhere, and it's just I feel like it was a bit fast how they progressed so quickly, and I thought they could have dragged it out a bit more. But for the sake
Mm,
of being a TV series, they've got to be quick. But overall, I quite like the scene where they're fighting, and of course, I like the Krang's sort of weaponry. And of course, it kind of reminds me of like going off topic here, nothing to do with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but it kind of reminds me of one of the las guns from the Halo
okay.
series. It's a
Mhm.
Halo video game series, which kind of reminded me of that. But apart from that, the scene was actually quite cool and quite quite interesting to watch overall.
So I have to say, for, like, I enjoy the fight, and I do also think for like or like and your opinion of like I do also like that fight as well, and like things that you said for like we were going quite fast. I do agree with like that as well as like Turtles being able to quickly being able to defeat them. But one thing I must say here is for like the Turtles were jumping around a lot more than they were in the last episode. And then a strange thing which I found was the Crane didn't speak for like half the episode, but I'm guessing you did quite enjoy that just due to your comments from the last episode about the Crane's speech.
Yes, very much
Um,
so.
yeah, no, I enjoy that they were quiet, but at the same time, it felt out of character for them. As I feel like maybe they could have been speaking like a bit more during like the first two fights. But like, I do feel like the presence of them not speaking did give them off like a really good presence, a threat, and all that. The other thing to say about the and when Ref or like and when like Splinter was talking to Toes out in the like living room area.
That scene was quite interesting because Splinter is telling them off and he's trying to understand the situation. And of course, from that scene, we understand a lot more of how Splinter is training them and how, of course, he's disciplining them, which is quite a mundane scene. But of course, as we go along, Splinter trains Ralph, sorry, trains Ralph to control his anger by the turtles doing insults at him, which I found hilariously funny.
Yeah. Okay. So with the with the scene just before to do the bow and arrow thing, one thing which did came to mind was when like Donnie said for like Vic's phone is a video phone. My question here is why couldn't Donnie have just hacked the phone? Like, because this was only 10 years ago. So like hacking like that sort of phone back then, that wouldn't been that would have been quite easy. So I don't really understand like the big problem with Tails going out to go and find him when Donnie could have just deleted it from his phone. But with the bow and arrow scene, I did find it quite interesting, and I will say this just like and just like the first time I did watch that scene, I did find it like funny enough to be funny, but not hilarious. But like, I was saying, like looking back on it now, um, I will say it's funny enough, but like not hilariously funny. But I want to know, like, because Tails kept shooting arrows, but they didn't have any quivers with more arrows. I want to know where they got the arrows from. Um,
Yeah, that is a quick question, unless they got a backup quiver in their shell or something.
I also like the fact that and when Tails was doing that, and just right before he fell over, they did like a spinning shot. But like when you look at the background, none of the turtles or moss splinters there, so I'm not exactly too sure what happened there. Do you have anything to say about when Raph sort of threatened Vic with like anime style sort of stuff?
Yeah, that when Vic was getting interrogated by Ralph, I quite like it because it's showing the different animation styles, which I quite like. And of course, when he's really angry, his um his head like literally explodes, and like you said, it goes into this anime sort of style, which what I quite like. And it's just seeing his personality go from okay. He's creeping up to that level of which he's about to explode and absolutely annihilate anyone who gets his path, and that's I quite like that.
Yeah, like with the anime sort of thing, it does sort of like remind me of like Teen Titans, especially of like how like it was like very serious and very like stylized in like that specific like art style, and then like every so often like it would like when it had to do like sort of like a special sort of thing, it would do like an anime sort of thing where it, like sort of takes it out of reality, and I feel like it did show off like Raf's anger, but it also at the same time I do sort of feel like it was bit tad bit weird just because like this was the only scene where this happens where Raph goes fully berserk and all that with that sort of thing. Even though there are like I mean and there are like, a few other times within this episode where like he does that, but like it still doesn't get that like emotion like anime sort of style. So I do feel like it was a really good way of like showing how angry he got, but at the same time it feels a bit weird with just only doing it for the one time. So what do you think about the second fight with the Krang?
The second fight scene with the Krang, I quite like how the Krang is the Krang how oh gosh, I've forgotten what I was going to say. Oh God, jeez, what was I going to?
You can do it.
Yeah, the second fight scene with the Krang, I quite enjoyed how um Vic was like secretly he didn't know it, but he was actually helping them, the Krang instead, and that was like a bit weird. He's thinking that they're normal humans, but they're not. That the Krang, the robots with tiny pieces with gum people, not gum people. Jesus, can't describe the Krang as gum people.
Aliens.
Aliens, that's a better word. Thank you. And of course, he's helping them, and of course, the Ninja Turtles they fight the Krang, and of course they are efficient now at killing Krang. Well, not killing them because it's a TV show meant for children, but the Ninja Turtles are making them less mobile, and they're taking them out in more efficiently, which I thought was a bit rushed. Like I would like to see how they would find tactics and strategies on how to take out the Krang more effectively instead of just going in and just knocking them off, one by one. But
Yeah.
for the sake of being a TV program and a TV series, I quite like it.
So with this fight, I did quite enjoy this one. I'll say this one was better than the first one, as like I feel like there was jumping around a bit more, but like it was more focused on Raph. I do feel like it was still quite a decent fight, but like I'll say for like I wish there was like a bit more variety in terms of their fighting skills. I mean, but like but the only thing is like I know they can make the argument for like there was only a few Krang there, so it didn't have, dish out all the moves. But like when they're like literally just jumping, I don't feel like it really shows off how good they properly can be. I do think that Vic in the scene was also quite good. I can't exactly describe why, but like for some reason he's just like really good. And yeah. Oh, and then, like the scene after this, because Rat's in a van, all the toes start running after him. How are they able to catch up to the van?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. Unless they've got some like Jack Fives that can run like at supersonic speeds and catch up with the car, I have no idea.
Because like the thing is like in like a few episodes, and like this is and like most things nowadays, like every sort of hero needs like a vehicle that. But like if they can able to run as fast as a van, or like near as fast as a van, and not slow down, why do they need a vehicle if they could just literally just leg it? So yeah, after that, Raph went home. Um, okay, so do you think Spike understands everyone, or do you think it's just more of a coincidence sort of thing?
Um, Spike, um, Spike is that pet that everyone's loves because he's always there, and of course, he's also a turtle. So I guess there is some relationship between the two because Raph is also a turtle, and of course Spike is also a turtle. And I guess they have this some sort of relationship between them, but in reality, he is like an emotional support for Ralph, and of course, Ralph is just unloading everything onto Spike because Spike doesn't talk back. And like most pets, people talk to pets to get their emotions out and how to take things slow and to try and build a structured response to a situation. And that's what most people do. And of course, he's just eating his lettuce leaf, Spike, and he's like, yep, I don't know what the hell you're saying, but yep, good on you, mate. That's literally what he does, and I just love it. Love that little scene.
Yeah. Like, and it seems like saying that now, like this will just like change my perspective on that little scene there. And now I'm also wanting like see more of like a more emotional side of Raph with like he just goes to do like this sort of therapy thing. What do you think of the backstory that my Splinter gave?
I really, really like the backstory because we go back to the flashback. It's in the black and white. It's in like the sort of anime manga sort of style, which I quite like as well. And going back at it, it was quite once again, a very dark and depressing backstory. Like, come on, what is up with that? He keeps talking about his past, and I'm like, dude, this is too dark for a kids program. Like, how is this even being aired? But for the sake of it, let's just go past the dark side. But I really quite like the story behind it that he used to have a girl, and of course, there his friend the Shredder and himself are trying to fight for the love of this girl, and of course, Shredder insults him. Splinter reacts. Done. Everything's done, and of course, we then find out Shredder takes revenge and kills his beloved, and pretty messed up. Like, Splinter's got some horrible, horrible past of pain and anguish, and he's just laying it out, trying to tell them that, look, don't do anything. This is how to do it. Because he's been through it all before. And there's just
Yeah.
me, like, okay, another dark story. Is Ralph going to take this on? Probably, maybe. Unlike Leo from episode one, where he says, like, see,
Oh,
and
that's my point.
and I'm trying to get my head around it. It's like, why is this? Is this? I don't understand it. But overall, I quite like the backstory. I quite like the flashbacks, and overall, it's a good flashback nonetheless, despite being quite dark and depressing.
Just imagine, and or no, no, or I can't imagine that. Or no, okay, so like, just imagine that it must be just kept like retelling this story, but like every episode, but like it had like a new bit of information. I do feel like that would be quite interesting. But with this backstory, I do feel like it was a really good backstory for and just for like the moment that for like Raph's story that it's going through, and do you feel like Splinter's voice really did help make the whole story a whole lot more better and more impactful than like if someone else was to do it? And I do feel like this whole scene here was probably like one of the best scenes from this episode, but I do feel like that's mainly just down to the voice, and I feel like it gives stuff like gives off all the emotions and everything like that, and like with the art style, I must admit it's still really great to see like that art style comes back. I would really love to see that like. I know, like either for like a full episode or if it's just a comic, but I feel like that would just be like an amazing art style to really delve into. And then also do like the color palette which you choose as well, like to show like Musminter's anger and all that, with and also like the scene that's going on with the fire and stuff like that. But the only thing I do have a problem with it is for like it's more or less it's sort of like a basic backstory that is not really too much like dark or very like deep. It's just oh someone called me a name so I punched him then he killed my wife like oh no, that's actually sounds a lot more deeper than what I just said. But still, either way, but also like it still did reuse the whole backstory from the last episode, so it's still like a really good backstory. But like, but I do feel like if they do keep like reusing it over and over again in just like a short amount of time, because like just because like last episode we got it, and now this one, I do feel like if they do keep reusing it, then I do feel like it might lose its impact on like the whole significance of Moss Winter losing his family and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, so with the next scene with Toes going into the Krang warehouse, do you have any comments on that?
When they go into the Krang warehouse, I just one thought came to mind. How big is this warehouse to have 3 or 4 floors? Like, seriously, what is this
Oh, it's more than
warehouse?
that. I think I must have like six, or something.
6?
Or no, because there was the one with the bottom of the glass. So it's probably another layer under that. Then there's the one which they fall into the first three, four, five. We're probably looking at quite I don't know, like 10-story thing. But like most of it was in like the basement, so I do guess it still makes up for it. But at the same time, I feel like it does do like in like a warehouse. I feel like it still would have had like the same impact without it making it seem like a much bigger house than it already is. But one thing which I like to say, which I so like one thing was when the toes going down, and it's almost like a 2D sort of thing with the silhouettes. It did remind me a lot of the IDW comics when I think it's like issue 16 where Slash first appears. But yeah, now when the Krang was looking at the phone and saying, "Oh yeah, Krang needs to see the picture of Krang," how do they know which Krang is which? Because they look the same, they're the same name, or am I just missing something?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question. It's like, who's Krang? You're Krang, he's Krang, I'm Krang. Who's Krang?
Everyone's Krang.
Everyone's Krang. But yeah, with that scene, I thought it's like, oh, Krang. It's like must be another Krang who's like the head of all Krangs, perhaps. But I guess not. But we'll find out later on in the series that if so. But with that, I quite enjoyed it. Like I did giggle at the scene where Krang is looking at himself shooting the dual wielding laser guns. I just love that scene. And he's just like looking at himself. It's just like that just giggled me up. That did. So I quite like that.
How did but like, I was thinking about this, like with that shot of Krang doing that two blaster thing or gun things. How did Vic get a good shot on that? Like sort of like close up, really steady camera. How? Because like in that sort of situation, his hand would be shaking. He wouldn't have a good focus or anything like that. So like, it's amazing how he does all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
okay, so with the so then going to the final battle, I don't think there's anything with the Krang to really talk about here. But then we do get the transformational spider bites. What do you think of spider bites?
Spider bites. I quite like the character because it is completely different to what Vic is, and now Vic is a giant mutated spider. Oh, just a side note, real quick. How
Mm-hmm.
did Vic become the spider? Because we saw the spider, right, on the Vic's phone, but he didn't actually touch the spider when the mutagen was on him. So I don't know whether he should have turned into a spider or uh, turned
Or
into a
phone?
giant phone. That's my problem with that scene. Trying to figure that one out.
Well, I guess that like maybe it might have something to do because just because like Mugen went down and pulled onto him as well as the spider. Maybe they might have like touched during it, or like they sort of combined the two. Mission is never really explained too well. All you need to know is that basically it turns you into a like animal, and that's really about as far as we know. But with the whole Spider Bites thing, I feel like he's like a really good character, and like he's like another one from like going from like Snakeweed to this one. It's like a really good like just going from like one bad guy to another, and with like the threat going up and up and up with how dangerous it is. The transformation scene. I feel like it was so much better than Snake's one, as it did have like more of a focus on being more scary, horror sort of stuff. And I do feel like that worked so well for the transformation scene. And then just to get like the Krang flying out and then the reveal of him, I feel like that was just an amazing scene to go off of that. Do you have anything about say about his transformation scene?
The scene where he transforms, I quite like because he's like you hear him scream, but you don't see him transform. And of course, the Krang ask other Krang to go and see what that noise was from over there. And of course, the dialect of the plain and simple Krang gets a bit annoying, but it's all right. It's funny along the lines as well. But he goes over there, and of course, the Krang gets knocked into next week, and of course he's terrified and he runs away, and of course he comes out of the darkness, and it's a completely different character from Vic, from the laziness and the fat person that he is, comes out to be like a giant spider killing machine, and it's just a complete throw off of like if someone was to watch it, it's like, whoa, where did this guy come from? Where's Vic? It's like, is he gone? Is he dead? But no, that's Vic as his character, which is quite an interesting change. And of course, it's a new dilemma and a new enemy that the Ninja Turtles face as a team. And I quite like that because it's developing the story of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series for this particular series, and I just love that.
Yeah, like with the like transformation scene, it did give me like sort of like vibes from I think it's like the Incredible Hulk movie from 2008, where like it seemed like get angry, then all of a sudden he comes, and then like Hulk comes out of the shadow. It reminds me a lot of that. And then like with Spike, no, not Spike, Spider Bites fighting the turtles, I thought this is like probably like a really good example, just like why turtles or like Ninja Turtles are quite good compared to like someone like Superman or like Iron Man, because like the turtles are very grounded in terms of like and like the things which they can do, like and like no martial arts, and then, like each character has like their own personality sort of thing which they can bring to the table. And like I feel like this sort of fight with Spider Bites really did show like just, and the reason why they're so good was because like even though like, and Toast had like specific set of skills to go up against him, they it's sort of like interesting to just see like how the Toes will be able to take him down just with like a sort of limited amount of skills. Whereas like Spider Bites, he was able to do like quite a lot of stuff with like the vomit acid, his long arms, like there's a lot of stuff like that. And I do feel like this is probably like a good scene to show of like how they're quite good compared to someone like Superman, where basically he has so many powers, he can almost do anything. Um, and yeah. Oh, also with this scene, you might not like this comment, but like with Johnny just going off like saying how like with spider bites, he's not really spiders or like something like that. He reminded me a bit of you, and I don't know if you're going to take offense to that, but I thought just take it as a compliment. um,
Okay, then how is this? Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how that works. But go on. I like to
no,
know.
no. So okay, so you know when like I can't remember what it was like. They said called him out or called him like a bug or something like that, and then Donny corrected him. For some reason, it just reminded me of you so much. I don't know why, but maybe please don't take offense to that.
Oh no, none taken. I quite like that.
Take it as a compliment.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and then after that, the turtles go through through the first floor. I mean, that's when Rash shows up, and he throws this like a acid vomit thing, and behind Raph is where like a tower of Mischief is, and that's where the acid went. But we never do get to see any Mischief pour out of it, so I'm sort of confused with what happens there. And then when the turtles fall through the glass thing, I feel like and do you have any comments about Raph showing up?
Yeah, Ralph showing up at that time is like the classic comic style approach, of course, where he turns up and he saves the day whilst his brothers are in trouble, and that is just a comical classic approach to how how these sort of things turn out to be. And of course, I quite like how he's up there. He's like, "Oh, look, it's the bug. I couldn't think could get more uglier than this." But and I quite like that how he insults him, and of course, he's now in full control of his emotions and just showing the how quick he can develop these skills.
So like after that they go through like another build or layer, and then that's when they go onto like a glass sort of like level sort of thing. And so the first comment is for like when because you see Johnny from underneath the glass and Michigan, and you hear him talk and he sounds a bit like weird. It reminded me a lot of his voice from the '80s Raphael, because there's like this one particular episode where like the turtles shrink and become very small, so like their voice is sort of like high pitched. It reminded me a lot of that. And then also when Spybites, or no, when Spybites goes down there and he just falls on there, I do feel like maybe he probably should have fallen through the glass. But yeah, and then like when Raph is just talking to, or like when Spybites is talking to Raph, but he's like almost like clearing his mind. I do feel like that was a really good scene, just showing off like how much Raph has developed through this episode, sort of in a way. And I do feel like that was quite a good scene. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. However, I feel like I know it's a TV series, and I know it's for quickness and for pacing out the different events within the series. But I feel like how quickly his emotions were controlled is quite quick. But of course, in the end, we know
Yeah.
he's still got these anger issues because he still goes after Mikey in the end. So that scene with the Raphael, he's controlling his emotions. I felt that was a bit too quick for him, and of course it could have been dragged out a bit longer. But for the sake of being a TV series and for pacing out the different events within the said series, I believe that was a bit too fast paced for the character development. However, in the end, we do see that Raphael is still Raphael being to Mikey and all of that, and he's still got a long way to go down the path.
Yeah, so like, I do agree with your comments on that, but like the thing is, I do feel like if this was like episode further down in this season, and there was more like a build up to Raph getting more angry and angry each episode, I do feel like this would have been like a really good episode to pay everything off. Um, Just because like there's in the 2003 show, which does is like exactly what this does, but like so well, because you see over because it's like a story arc over 13 episodes of Leonardo's anger like developing each episode until like eventually like goes off the rails and goes completely wrong, to the point where like and then like dedicate to one episode where like it just more or less just trying to get him back on track. And I feel like he does do that with Raphael with this season. And I feel like that would have been like this episode would have been like a great one to really just like end things off with his anger, because like, and the reason why just because like next episode his anger isn't really there, and like episodes after that and even episodes before this he didn't have this anger, and this sort of comes out of nowhere. So like it feels good to have him like sort of finish his story, but at the same time a bit pointless just because there wasn't really much of a reason there, because and the reason why just because like before this episode he didn't really much of an anger problem, but after this one he still didn't have one either. So and then like he never really learns from it, because like in future episodes he still has the same problem where like he'll just dedicate to like a like an anger one, and just comes out the blue. So so I do feel like this scene was quite a good one with ending it, but at the same time, I do feel like the whole story could have been a whole lot better. So when Raphael said that basically they're not frogs beneath toes, and like all toes came to that scene, I thought that was very cliche, and it reminded me a lot of the scene from Avengers Endgame where like all the female characters came together. Well, like it wasn't really necessary, but it was cool. But why was it in there? Do you think about that?
That scene, I quite like it because it was, of course, like you said, it was cliche, but in the end, it just cements the title of the series to the viewer, saying, "Look, we ain't frogs, we're Ninja Turtles." And of course, as a viewer, you're like, "Oh my god, he said it! He said it! He actually said it!" It's that one of those moments, and I quite enjoyed that as a new viewer to the series, which I quite liked about it.
Mm. Well, yeah. And do you have anything to say about the ending? Because I don't really have much to say about it, but like with like the ending scene with Raph going back to annoying or sort of beating on Mikey, it sort of feels like he hasn't really developed too much, and it sort of feels like he's just gone back to like I just feel like he's just gone back to like how he was at the beginning of the episode, but this time he's not doing it because he's really angry, but because he's a brother. But like the thing is, there's no real clear difference between the two.
Yeah, like I said previously, that we do see the development happen, and of course, then he completely ditches it. But with this one, it doesn't. Like you said, there is a lack of change within Ralph's character because Ralph is Ralph. Like he's the bad boy. He's the anger, the uptight, stubborn, hard-headed, and of course, he's still annoying and he's still frustrated with his brothers. But that's brotherly love. That's brotherly banter, and of course, that's in every family, not just Ninja Turtles, but in reality, that is just how I guess brothers react. And of course, they wind each other all the time. And of course, I guess that's just how brothers react, and that's how they show that they secretly love each other deep down inside, even though they may hate each other sometimes. They love each other deep down inside.
Oh, and one quick question, like because I know you have a brother, are any of these things like, or like especially like Raph or Mikey or like if any toes, are you like able to like relate to them because of like and like you like bond with your brother?
Yes, many of the scenes I do kind of relate to what I have with my younger with my brother, and of course,
Is that a good
yeah.
thing or a bad thing?
No, I actually I'm not too sure whether it's a good thing or bad thing, but it just comes to show that they are taking inspiration from reality, and of course, and it just shows, in my opinion, it shows the reality of what my life sometimes looks like with my brother annoying me and how sometimes you would react to that situation. But overall, I think it's a quite a good scene, despite the fact that they are they're just brothers at the end of the day. And of course, that's how brothers actually communicate and they say, "Look, mate, I love you, but you're still absolutely annoying to me." So, in relation, yeah, I can relate to some scenes.
Okay, okay, so that was it for that episode. So okay, so I don't want to hear some trivia about it.
Go on then, lay down some trivia.
Okay, so Spider Bites, in the 2003 show, in the last season, April has a ring that like, that's like releasing monsters. One of them was Spider Bites, but the only thing is like, for like the one from 2003 show and one this version, they are nowhere near like, and I think like the only thing that sort of like connects them is the name. Um, then the oh no okay and there is one piece of trivia on here which I'm not going to say just because it could potentially spoil a future episode. So with the following, okay, so following the title spar with bows and arrows, Leonardo Donatello Michelangelo against Raphael. Spencer lectures Raphael about Nikushishi, which is the spirit of humility, fortitude, and perseverance. I'm pretty sure I said that wrong. Or as my Spencer says, Niki Shishu Shin is the ability to endure insults with patience and humility, and you cannot be a true ninja until you master it. The essence of the Nikinshini is the spirit of the ninja who has the power to use patience together with the body, mind, and subconsciousness. Is this power that and it's this power that one must develop by training hard. The result will lead to the ability to pocket any insult and later throw it away together with all traces of resentment. Yeah. And then this is also the first 22-minute episode for the show. And then last bit of it, which is sort of like a trivia sort of thing, sort of not. But Vic calls details Kung Fu Frogs, and like people sort of like made like could be like a reference or an homage to a group called Punk Frogs, which are basically the Turtles but frogs. And yeah, so okay, so with the cast, it's actually quite surprising with who they have in the cast. Let me try and get the cast up. So the cast for this episode, you had Sean Astin as Raphael, Jason Biggs as Leonardo, you had Greg Sipes as Michelangelo, Rob Paulson as Donatello, Hume Lee as Splinter, for Krang, and I had Nolan North voice Krang, and then for Spider Bites, who also did Vic as well, he was voiced by Lewis Black. And unlike you might know, have you seen the movie Inside Out?
Yes, I have seen Inside Out many of times.
Well, the person who voices Anger did the voice of Spider Bites in this episode.
Oh, no way.
So, yeah, I mean, it all suits his character quite well.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
I don't know if that's a good thing, but it does.
Oh my god, now listening back to it, you can actually, now listening back between both Anger and Vic, you can actually hear you can actually hear the voices, and oh my god, I never knew about that.
Just imagine if, like, this is going to annoy me now because, like, I can't get this image out of my head now. Just like seeing like Anger in his head, like doing all the buttons, and then just hear his voice come out. Oh, that must be so weird.
Oh,
that's going to annoy me now.
Some conspiracy here. I'm going to lay this out. Vic's mind must have tons of little Anger versions of himself just running his head. That's all I can see now. That's all I could see.
Yeah, that was that for this episode. I feel like we pretty much like really just delve into like things I want to say, almost like kind of repeating ourselves in terms of like the story was good, but like it would have been better if it had a lot more build up and it was a lot longer story. I don't feel like we can add anything to that, or unless you want to add anything to it.
No, I'm 100% with you, mate. However, I've only got one con with this episode, is that I believe this episode should have been further down the line of the series, because it just shows that it was really quick and fast paced, and you were trying to understand, hold on a sec, where did this anger come from? Why is he angry at everyone? And I just felt like this was rushed a bit. But overall, a good episode. I just thought it should have been further down the line of the series.
Because in the 2003 show, they do sort of do like this, but the only thing is, in the 2003 version, it happens in episode 4. But the only thing is like for the first 3 episodes, you do actually see a bit more of his angry side, and he does have quite like sort of like Tim's tantrums throughout the first 3 episodes. So when you do get to episode 4, there is like too much of like a big like, oh my god, I can't believe he's angry all of a sudden. There is like a little bit of build up to and you get to the episode and it's like, oh, so he's gonna be angry, and like you do actually get like a good payoff for that episode in terms of his anger as well, where it doesn't really feel too rushed, but at the same time, maybe they could have done it a bit laid down in the series as well, like and for this one. But yeah, that's all I've got for this episode. Do you have anything else to say, or shall we end this?
No, I'm pretty much okay. Overall, this episode was quite an enjoyable one to watch, and quite a funny one as well, because it just delves deeper into the brotherly banter, which I quite like to see. And apart from that, I think we're done.
Okay, so like the final question is for like, and for next week's episode, the title is called "New Friends, Old Enemies." What do you think is going to happen in next week's episode?
New friend, old enemies. I believe this next week's episode is going to include a past enemy, someone that we've confronted before, or someone who has been an enemy before, and now we have to join forces to overthrow a new enemy. That's what I'm thinking.
Oh, a much better or theory about what's going to happen in the next episode than like last week's one. You're actually kind of close with the description, like especially with, like the first part. And this might frustrate you now in terms of in terms of and what's going to happen next week. But also next week's episode has one of the voice actors, which I feel like when you hear who it is, you won't be able to unsee the person who he's voiced before, and I feel like you may be able to guess who he is while watching the episode, but yeah, that's something you should look forward to watching. Yeah, that's been another episode of Talking Turtles. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you, Hayden, for being here as well.
Oh, no worries, mate. My pleasure.
Yep. Oh, and also another thing, guys, if you do want to like leave a review or anything like that, you can go over to Anchor. There's going to be a link in the description so you can send the reviews. By the time this podcast is officially out for you, we'll start reading the comments, so like it could extend the thing a little bit more. And also, there's going to be a link to a Google Forms page where basically you can like sign up to like and put your place down for a future episode in terms of like coming on and being a guest and talking about one of the episodes. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today, guys. Yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.